said you wanted to banter. So what are we going to banter about?
No. Okay, first of all, it's not like I want to banter. I was just saying that, like, a lot of other podcasts seem to have that, and they're successful, and, you know, like, what's My Favorite Murder? They banter for, like, 10 hours before they do their thing.
10
and they're
hours.
Like, it's exactly 10. And they're really successful. But here's the thing, though. I think if we do a test banter, I mean, first of all, I don't know if we can be referential about it, but
you're saying I can't say
you can't say it.
No, we have time for banter.
It has to seem authentic. We have to be, for our cult members that listen to us, they have to think that it's all real.
So is that what we're calling our listeners?
Yeah, they're cult are just weird.
That's not what you said. You said cult members.
They're cult members. That's what I mean. They're just weird cult members.
Okay.
It's the cult are just weird cult.
What is it if you're in a cult? You're just a follower?
Cultist. I believe it's cultist. Or follower.
I don't think if you're in the cult, you're not going to call yourself a cultist.
That wasn't what you asked. You asked what we call them.
No, never mind. This banter's terrible.
That's your fault. You're like, what are they called? Cultists?
What do they call themselves?
Okay, well, you didn't
I'm
ask?
clarifying the question. So they would call themselves followers.
I really think it probably depends on the cult. Like, I don't know. It probably depends on what the organization is, especially for the stuff we talk about where it's like, you know, middle ground stuff. They might not even think of themselves that way.
Could just be weird.
But yeah, no, so actually I was going to say that I think just because this episode is going to be such a doozy, maybe banter, we'll do the banter experiment next episode.
Okay.
Just because if we do too much banter in this episode, it's going to be like, oh my God, it's
so you're saying
long.
We need to do banter when we need filler.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
So
I don't think that's like a secret, right?
Like about us or about podcasts in
general?
podcasts,
about...
You're just like throwing shade at all the podcasts?
About it's whatever. That's what banter is. It's filler. It's definitely filler.
I thought banter was a way for us to bond, a way for us to bond with our listeners, a way for us to chit-chat. And
this is weird because we're bantering about banter. I don't know if I like it.
It's hella meta.
Yeah. But anyway, I think, just because this episode is it's called content heavy.
Okay.
Maybe we just get into it. So this is Chris.
This is Kayla, and welcome to Cult or Just Weird, the content heavy podcast.
Episode 4.
Oh my God, we did it.
I know.
We're all the way to episode 4.
If you don't like content or heaviness and you're going to be bored, then feel free to check out, leave us a 1-star review on, wherever you get your podcasts.
Or just listen while you're playing Candy Crush. We're really great background.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I do.
Exactly.
I'm playing Candy Crush right now.
It's my honey voice that just makes it so...
You do have a honeyed voice.
I don't know about that. Okay, so this is episode 4.
Do we need to explain what we are as a podcast, or are we assuming our listeners...
We have such a huge following at this point.
True.
Well, okay, but we can do it real quick, though. Yeah, because it's only episode 4. We are a podcast that talks about... Groups that may just be weird, or maybe they are cults. Maybe they're so weird,
you encounter in your daily life, and maybe you go, huh.
And featuring our expertise and training of exactly nothing.
We know how to use the
curiosity.
Internet, yeah.
We talk about these things, and then we make a proclamation that should be definitive as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah. No, the buck stops here. Like, we are the official be-all and end-all of cult classifications.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I'm assuming, I think probably we have the type of listener base where they've probably heard of this. I'm sure you have, but...
I heard about it because of you.
Pascal's Dilemma.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
You've heard of Pascal's Dilemma.
I'm not smart, my friend.
So, Pascal's Dilemma is Blaise Pascal is a philosopher, and it was basically his reason for believing in God. And basically what it was so there's 2 things you can do. You can either believe in God or not believe in God.
Okay.
If you do believe in God and he doesn't exist, oh well, no harm, no foul. There's no difference. If you do believe in God and he does exist, then sweet, like you get eternal salvation, right? You can make a little matrix of these results. If you don't believe in God and he does exist, then you're going to hell. So you have eternal hell.
Right.
And if you don't believe in God and he doesn't exist, it's the same as if you do and you do believe in him and he doesn't exist. Like either way, he just doesn't exist. So by his logic, he was saying you should just believe in God because there's no downside to doing it. You might as well do it just in case he's real.
I have literally no idea why we're talking about this, and I'm so interested to know why.
I know.
Because I know what your topic is.
Yeah, this is so just for our listeners.
I'm so excited to hear how this ties in. I mean, I could talk for 10 hours about... I know of this dilemma. I didn't know it was called Pascal's dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
We could talk about this for 10 hours. I'm kind of hoping that that's what we're doing.
No, unfortunately. I know. I wish we could be a philosophy. We're going to have a spin-off philosophy podcast.
Philosophy or just weird?
Philosophy or just weird.
Or cult or just philosophy.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so just for our listeners, I think this is probably going to be the last episode where we know each other's topics ahead of time. And we're going to try to, next time, we're going to try to be secret about it.
Right.
And you're going to try to surprise me. But, we'll see because we sort of live together.
Oh, it'll be a surprise.
Okay. But yeah, so Pascal's dilemma is it has a bit of a logical hole in that it doesn't account for the possible existence of competing deities.
Right. That's the big problem.
So the big hole with it is what if there's actually a flying spaghetti monster and he's mad that you did believe in God, then all of a sudden the believe in God piece of that choice is no longer it's super safe.
Right.
So that kind of...
And you can't really hedge your bets by believing in all of the gods because a lot of them are only believe in this one.
A lot of them are a little mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a bit of a logical hole, and that allows different groups to basically have different beliefs. And like you said, some of them are mutually exclusive. So I have actually another question for you. So
for
I know,
me?
I'm starting with a bunch of questions today. So yeah, there's a bunch of different groups with different beliefs. What do you think some of the weirdest are?
You're saying you're right now. You're asking me to put a bunch of religions on blast.
No, it could be cults. Yeah, totally. Stack rank your top 10 weirdest religions.
I mean, the Hale-Bopp comet folks, they were really weird.
It was Heaven's Gate, right?
Heaven's Gate. That's pretty weird. You're really...
Do you have any favorites? I don't know.
You're putting me on the spot here. I didn't know I needed to prepare.
Well, we're on a podcast.
I didn't know I needed to prepare.
You need to react.
Well, I also don't want to spoil any of my future topics because I'm thinking of...
Well, the thing is, I mean, the weirder ones are going to be ones that we're going to do, so it's fine. Because my answers to... Because I was, I have my own answers.
You're the one who actually got to prepare, so maybe you answer the question instead of
putting me
on the spot.
So I'll just say, what do you think the weirdest cult group beliefs are?
Thank you.
I'll react to my own.
Okay, how about I do this? How about I do a throwback to a previous podcast episode, the Best Friends Animal Society / Foundation Church of the Millennium.
Oh, that's some weird stuff.
They're 4-quadrant, we believe in God and Lucifer and Jesus and Satan.
Right. That was...
I guess, honestly, when you really think about it, it's not weird, but
strange.
It's weird in the context of living in a very straight up Christian heavy country to have the Satanist plus straight up regular Christian beliefs all together.
No, that was out there. I mean, it was definitely surprising. So I mean, personally, I think the flat earther thing is a little strange, and Scientology is right up there.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Sorry. Scientology's alleged beliefs are definitely up there.
They're first tier beliefs of you can overcome your emotional blocks. That's not that weird. It's when you get into the
there's some of the first tier stuff is weird too, the e-meters and all psychiatry is bad.
Yeah, don't.
But when you get into the alleged later tier stuff with Xeno and whatever, that's the truly weird stuff.
Right.
So
the lizard people's
weird.
That's not Scientology. That's a different thing. But people who believe in the lizard people, I think that's strange.
Yeah. But most groups have a set of what you'd call beliefs, have at least one or more weird ones, right? Kind of no matter, even basic Christianity has some weird Nephilim shit going on,
Well, so also, not to put, I'm not criticizing, but Jesus died and came back. That's
totally. Resurrection's
normal thing to believe.
Strange. It's, I was raised Catholic, and Catholics believe that you are literally eating the body and blood of Christ.
Right.
Every Sunday,
and it feels normal because we're
cannibalistic.
We're used, we're exposed to that often, so we're just kind of
we're normalized to it. Yeah. So then I have one more question to kind of kick us off here. So you take some of these weird beliefs.
Okay.
What if tomorrow NASA came out and said, "Oh, hey, my bad. The moon landing was actually a hoax, and the Earth really is flat." Or
are you saying how would I react?
Yeah, what
flip the fuck out.
Right? Or what if Xenu was real? What if all what if there were really DC-10s flying around with thetans, or I'm not super sure because we haven't done this episode yet what all their beliefs are.
I'm so concerned about how this is going to relate back to your topic. How, what, why, explain.
Well, would that change your opinion of the Scientologists? Would they be a cult still?
No, if what they believed in was real, they would not be a cult.
Even though they have like a lot of other features about them that they're like, there's insider, outsider, you have to give them a lot of money. It just so happens that on top of all that strange, bizarre stuff, they're right.
I think that given our criteria is like, given that our one of the like major criteria that we have is the like denial of truth and the like obfuscation of truth.
So those things, okay, right, I see what you're saying. So you remove that criteria and maybe it's not enough.
I think so. I don't know.
And furthermore, what if Xenu weren't real? And the Scientologists knew that he wasn't real, but they had the power to bring him into existence if only they prayed and donated hard enough.
Well, that sounds like the beginning of like a science fiction series.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, right?
Yeah, why are you asking me these questions?
Yeah, good question. Well, why don't you hold that thought?
No.
And I'm going to take you all the way back to 2012.
Oh, God.
To talk about Kickstarter.
Okay.
Perfect segue, right?
Is Kickstarter a cult?
Probably not. That's probably too far in the realm of normal for us to ever do on the show. But we're going to talk about them anyway.
Okay.
So just a baseline. I know probably everybody knows about this, but just a baseline. What is Kickstarter? So Kickstarter is a crowdfunding site. And what that means is, and this is sort of the key, is that if you participate in a Kickstarter, you're a backer or a supporter and you make pledges. You are not an investor and you don't make an investment. So basically there's these like projects on Kickstarter that anybody can go. I can be like, I want to make a board game. That's pretty popular in Kickstarter.
Right. Or
I want to write a book and I need money to do that. So you can go on Kickstarter. You can say, I'm doing this thing. I need people to fund me. And then people basically just pledge. They donate. So for the creators, it's basically like low risk, essentially risk-free funding because you don't have investors or you're not borrowing money. And it's a high risk investment for the backers. But just because it's high risk doesn't mean it's bad. If that high risk comes with a high reward, then it's worth it for people. So, there are projects that have basically just been fans of some IP resurrecting it via Kickstarter, stuff that never would have happened before Kickstarter.
Right.
So, you can say like, oh man, it's so risky, like you can't get your money back, but it makes things possible that weren't possible before. So like, you might remember Veronica Mars. Veronica Mars was this TV show, and literally fans like birthed a feature film production about it just by going to Kickstarter and donating a shit ton of money. And in fact, I saw a CNBC headline that literally read, the headline was, quote, Kickstarter campaign brings Veronica Mars movie to life. So there you go.
That's what happened.
And you don't pledge for nothing. Like, you're not just saying like, please do this. Like, depending on how much money you give to a Kickstarter project, you are promised some sort of real reward when the product is released or when the project is finished. Right. So like, I don't know, in the Veronica Mars movie, I have no idea. I'm just guessing they probably got names in the credits. It can be as small as it can be as small as t-shirts, or like I mentioned board games, they'll give you a copy of the board game.
Right.
At larger amounts, you're promised everything from like having your name immortalized in the comic you backed to like you get a card in the board game named after you. Right.
I think for some of them, like some of these more like, we're going to film something, you can like get a set visit, like different things like that.
Dude, great segue, because I was going to say also sometimes they promise like meet the team. Or like you said, set visit. That's basically that's set visit. So Kickstarter's been around for a little while, but I did say I'm going to bring you back to 2012 and talk about Kickstarter. So why did I bring you back to that year?
Yeah, why are we back at the early days?
The early days of the halcyon days of Kickstarter, 2012, when the Mayan calendar said everything was going to end.
Oh, man.
In that year, one of the biggest crowdfunding projects of all time was born.
Oh.
Partially on Kickstarter.
Okay.
In fact, this funding project was so big and took in so much money that it lived in two places, on Kickstarter, but also on the project's own website, which long-term is actually where they wound up raising most of their money.
Is that allowed? You're allowed to like raise on Kickstarter and elsewhere? I mean, I guess, yeah. I guess.
They don't give a shit. Like, right. I can go make a website and be like, donate to the Chris Carlson Fund, the Human Fund, please. And I can do that on Kickstarter too. Like that, it's just like whatever,
right?
Like nobody would do it for me because I'm not George Costanza,
right?
But maybe in the future, I don't know. But this project was record-setting, and it was a tiny little video game, and that's sarcastic. It's not tiny at all. Called Star Citizen.
This is why I'm confused as to why you started your episode with those questions that you had, because all I knew is that we were talking about a video game,
mm-hmm.
and I'm really interested to know how that relates to like the concept of God and worship.
Hold on to your butts, as Samuel L. Jackson's character from Jurassic Park. Oh my
God, I was about to divorce you.
Dude, he's in like 87 different movies a year.
If you were unable to recall the film that line was from, this would be the end of our marriage.
Could we go back and maybe cut out that slight pause to make it look like I just said it immediately?
No, I need to have that immortalized for
whatever.
Like eventually if I ever need to like leave you, I need that as evidence as to why it was necessary.
I mean, you don't really need an excuse. You can just leave me.
I know what I'm saying, for like when I want to get the money.
Oh, right.
When I want to sue you for all the money.
Like $0. Yeah. So, Star Citizen, record-setting crowdfunding.
I need to tell you before we get going on this.
Uh-huh.
I know the name. I don't know anything about Star Citizen. I have no idea what kind of video game it is. I have no idea how popular it is, who plays. I know nothing about it. So I'm very excited for this.
Well, I am here to fill in all of those gaps and then some.
Great.
So here's a few facts about the record-setting crowdfunding. Currently 4th on the list of highest amount raised all-time crowdfunding projects.
4th of all time?
4th all time.
Of all crowdfunding or just Kickstarter?
All-time crowdfunding. It is only beat by 3 blockchain technologies. And for context, the next entertainment item on this all-time list is another video game, coming in at 24th place. And out of the top 30, 23 are blockchain related. So what I'm basically saying here is that for you to get to the top of the crowdfunding list, you have to be one of two things. You have to be either a revolutionizing technology and novel investment vehicle that has massive global inflow of capital.
Okay.
That's blockchain.
Okay.
Right. That's like the reason we're obsessed with blockchain is because everybody wants to be a Bitcoin billionaire. Right. Like that's why. So you either need to be that or Star Citizen. You need to be one of those two things to be in the top of the list.
Okay.
At the time of this recording, over 2.2 million backers have pledged more than $216 million to Star Citizen. Just let that sink in for a minute. Think about all the movie budgets you know about.
That's a lot of money.
Think of all the Waterworlds.
That's a lot of money.
That's more than Waterworld, I believe.
Yeah,
Of course, Waterworld's not the record setting.
Yeah, no, why'd you bring up Waterworld?
Well, because I'm still living in the 90s in my head, and like I remember in the 90s, it was like Waterworld's budget is so crazy, and I know it's been beaten by like 30 other things now.
Yeah, that was just a weird one to.
And yet I had to hesitate remembering Jurassic Park. So like I don't know. I guess I'm just getting old.
Jurassic Park was also in the 90s.
That's what I mean. That's why I'm getting old, is because I'm remembering one thing from the 90s, but not the other.
That doesn't make any sense. And also, I don't understand how much money. That's too much money.
It's a lot of money.
It's too much money. That's an insane amount of money.
Yeah. So they were breaking land speed records to get to their goals. Like, they started out with like 500,000 and it was like, whoa, that already happened. Oh my God.
Okay.
Okay. $1 million. Okay. 2 million. Wait, no. 6 million? I don't know. Like, let's keep going.
Right.
And they were just blowing by their stretch goals and setting new ones as fast as they needed to. And the Kickstarter campaign actually ended the same year. It ended in November 2012.
Wait, so you can't still donate money to this?
Oh, you can.
Oh, you can.
Just not through Kickstarter.
Okay.
So what that means is they are continuing to raise money on their own. And remember I said the majority was actually the vast majority of their money has been raised on their own.
So $216 million is only a part of what they've raised and it's only a small part?
No. It's the other way around.
Okay.
That's the amount they've raised. It's just only a small part of that was from Kickstarter.
Gotcha. Okay. I was about to flip my shit and I was already flipping my shit.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. It's only $216 million.
That's an insane amount of money, which is why I was going to freak out.
But if you want to go ahead and flip your shit, guess how much of it was on Kickstarter versus how much they raised on their own.
Well, I don't want to guess because I don't want to say a ridiculous number and make you look bad.
$2 million.
It's a very small percentage.
Of the 216, 2 was on Kickstarter. And this is according
That's like
to
less than 1%?
the Star Citizen Wiki. There's a couple different sources out there. There are some sources that seem to suggest that it was more, but none that seemed as authoritative as the Star Citizen Wiki.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, 2 million is such a small piece of 216. It's less than it's half a percent, or
it's just like under a percent.
It's just under 1% because of the 16. Yeah, it makes it almost just, to me, it almost feels like the Kickstarter was like marketing more than anything else.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Like it's crazy. So most of their funds come from, and we'll definitely get more into this, but you know, there's I'm going to be saying that a lot. We'll get more into this. But now most of their funds come from buying in-game ships, like starships, for real money. Gobs of real money.
Like
in-game content. Yeah. So like anywhere from like $40 for like a small starfighter, like a little like
that's already too much money.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money to spend on something in a game.
Yes, but the larger ships, like the capital class ships, can cost up to hundreds of dollars.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I've never spent hundreds of dollars on anything.
Did I mention that the game isn't out yet?
No, you didn't mention that. You did not mention that. So, okay. So
I'm going to ask you to hold that thought as well.
I don't want to hold it.
Hold on to it. So you might be wondering at this point, aside from the thing I just mentioned, the little tease I just mentioned, is why did it raise so much money? Or like, why was it this like record setting, like only in the, you know, the rarefied air of blockchain, you know, get rich quick stuff? Like, why is it so much money?
Right.
Of course, it's a complicated question. And if we could answer it perfectly, we'd all be multimillionaires. But from my research and interviews, there are a few reasons for what one of my interviewees called the perfect storm of crowdfunding.
Oh, you sound so official.
I know. So first, he convinced me that the audience for this game was an underserved audience, which plays actually a big role in this whole story.
Before you continue, are you allowed to like give us any info on who this?
I'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
Sort yes and no.
Okay.
So there aren't a lot of really good AAA, which is like a gaming way of saying like high quality, well-designed space simulators out there, which that's what Star Citizen is.
What is a space simulator?
We'll talk about that.
Okay.
You have games like Eve, which Eve, for listeners that are not gamers, Eve is another online game where you are basically like piloting a starship in like this far off galaxy. And it's the thing about Eve is that makes it really fun is that it's like there's kind of no rules. So it always makes headlines for like players destroying each other's ships in these enormous like epic battles, and it's just kind of goes bonkers. But it's also been called quote unquote spreadsheets in space because it's mostly an economy game.
Yeah, it sounds boring.
Right? Like it's fascinating and cool when you actually like have these massive battles, but like to get to that point, it's all like, well, you know, so and so in our corporation mined the minerals from planet 572, and you know, so it's a lot of that. Not
a game for me.
Yeah, it's definitely a game for some people, not for everyone. And then you also have like things like No Man's Sky, which again for non-gamers is a game that was released a few years ago now. 1 year, 2 years ago, a few years ago now. So No Man's Sky was basically like this. It was procedurally generating a universe, and procedural generation. I'm sorry, like a lot of explanation this time.
Just say it was an infinite game. Like you.
It was an infinite game. No, procedural
generation
is important. Procedural generation means that the game itself is generating the content. So like rather than me go and like design a planet and, you know, make art for it and put creatures on it and whatever, the game is just through some sort of algorithm is basically saying like, okay, let's make a planet, let's give it this much plants and let's put some water over here and some creatures over there.
So there's not like a designer actively designing that world. It's just like they, you know, put a bunch of algorithms in and then the game itself can just like generate it infinitely.
Exactly. You're designing the designer sort of.
Okay.
So that's another game, but it was like very, what's the word? It was a big disappointment to a lot of people because while it was really fascinating in its like scope and infiniteness and procedural generation, there was nothing like, there was no meaningfulness to it.
Right.
It was
There's
just like
clearly not a story.
There's no story. There were no quests. Like you couldn't even interact with other players to do any sort of like combat or PvP. So it was just like, it was like a neat little sandbox for a little while, and then it kind of was like, and people were expecting a lot more, so people got disappointed. And then the problem with that is that this audience that I'm talking about that feels underserved as an audience, so they're only getting convinced even more that they'll never see a good game that's for them.
Right.
Because they're like, well, No Man's Sky, I tried that, and that was a big debacle, so nobody's going to try anymore. And then you also have, just to kind of round out like the other like space sims out there, there's a game called Elite Dangerous, which is a legit competitor to something like Star Citizen, but it doesn't have the same sort of immersion aspects, which I'll talk more about that for Star Citizen. But, for Elite Dangerous, you're basically like a pilot and, in a starfighter. And there's not the same like MMO, like I'm immersed in this universe the way you are with Star Citizen. So basically that sort of, and people are clearly craving that sort of immersion, right? So that appetite drove people, and lots of them, to pledge lots of money to this game that was like a dream of theirs, basically. This dream game.
Right.
So you have this underserved audience, and then the pitch was really good. So this is number 2. The Kickstarter pitch was really good. I said dream. They basically sold a dream to their backers,
right?
Which of course that's dangerous because everyone's dreams are different. But Star Citizen's ambitious feature set didn't help that either. So it's kind of like, it was like everything to everyone, which made it really compelling.
Right, but that's going to be hard to deliver on.
But then it's hard to deliver on.
Trying to make a game that's literally going to please every gamer, like
yes.
There's so many different kinds of games and so many different kinds of gamers. Like,
right.
How can you deliver on that?
But there was a thing that legitimized this dream, and that's number 3.
Okay.
The Kickstarter would not, the perfect storm of crowdfunding would not have been possible without this number 3, which is none other than Citizen Nation's. Can I call it Citizen Nation? I think I just made that up.
What's Citizen Nation?
It's like the group of people that are into Star Citizen. I don't know. Anyway, I'll just say the Star Citizen fans.
Call them Citizen Nation. Who cares?
Citizen Nation.
Are you going to come after us?
No, I mean, I think it's not even a bad name. But it's none other than their own charismatic leader, Chris Roberts. And we will definitely
that's a good name.
Yeah, it's a good name. We'll talk a bit about more about him. I know we're doing that for a lot of stuff here, but let's just say his involvement as a founder and CEO made the pitch very compelling.
Okay. I'm excited.
And then the 4th thing is that they had compelling rewards. So we talked about the rewards that that sometimes you get from Kickstarters. And so theirs were very compelling. They were showing beautiful artwork of beautifully designed ships. And
right, because you need to be able to see what you're going to get if you're going to want to donate, millions of dollars to this thing.
And especially if you're like, oh, I really want to play a space game, and there's like this beautiful, ship art.
Right.
Then that's really going to, drive people's interest. And I know I mentioned earlier, you were talking about like flying out to the set or like meeting the team.
Right.
Well, some of the early high-level backers were actually flown out to Santa Monica to meet with Mr. Roberts himself.
So this situation is 10 minutes from us.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's still there, but they have studio. They have studio locations in like 5 different places, like one in the UK, one in Texas. I think there's one here.
But there's no game?
We'll get to that. This is probably a good spot to mention, since we're talking about those things that made this perfect storm of crowdfunding. A good spot to mention how intelligent and business savvy this company is that Chris Roberts founded. So,
what's the name of the company?
The name of the company is called Cloud Imperium Games.
Okay, sounds like a cult.
It kind of does. We'll call it CIG because that's how it's referred to on the internet, and it's easier to say. But yeah, so when they got this massive influx of cash, this is just talking about how intelligent they are. They realized 2 things, which, one is we have a lot of cash. I think everybody would realize that. That's obvious. But the second thing they realized is, we have a community with like a massive amount of interest and engagement. So how do we take advantage of that going forward? So their community management is really spectacular, which is part of why they were able to keep raising money well past 2012 into today as we speak.
So I could go on the internet right now and donate money to them?
For a game that is technically not even released.
Why do you keep saying technically?
We'll get to that. But yes, you could go on the internet right now. You could go to their website. It's called Robert Space Industries.
Why isn't their website called Cloud Imperium Games?
I'm not sure, but Robert Space Industries is like a fictional thing inside the Star Citizen universe. So maybe that's why they do it. I don't know. But you can go there and donate.
I can't help but notice that Roberts is the last name of the guy that you were just talking about.
Yeah, that's fully That's fully intentional.
I know.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting.
Right.
For somebody to create a game and then like.
Name shit after himself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he has a godlike amount of power. So that's, probably makes you want to do stuff like that. I don't know. But yeah, so that's the crazy gilded birth of the Star Citizen project from the womb of crowdfunding. But before we get into some of these details about the game and its creators and its fans, though, all these things I've been saying, wait, we'll talk about it. I just want to make a quick interlude statement about this episode being near and dear to my own heart, just because I work in the game industry.
Video game industry, just to clarify.
Video game industry, right? I'm not making board games, I'm making video games. Board games are super cool, but I make video games. Full fact, disclosure, the game my company is working on right now, it actually uses the same game engine and AI backend systems that Star Citizen does.
Really?
Yeah. So, but since I have these sort of like game industry connections, I was like, I can be a little more involved with this episode. So I figured I'd like try to slightly legitimize this podcast as being journalistic. So in addition to the normal online research, I also interviewed some folks about their experience with Star Citizen.
Are you you actually interviewed them?
Yeah, oh yeah, I like legit interviewed them for like quite a long time. So I was able to get two of my friends to speak with me. They're big fans of the game and backers themselves. I told them I wouldn't say their names. They weren't like scared or anything. They were just like, don't.
Right. Yeah,
they weren't like, oh my god, if you say my name, then like the Citizen cult will come get me.
They're not saying that Chris Roberts is gonna like
no.
Call them suppressive people.
Right. No. It's not like that. But they were just like, just don't use our names. And they're also backers themselves. So they've spent money on the game. I was really hoping that I would have a connection that either works or worked at CIG, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. But as part of this research and interview process, I did get to play the game. And again, you might be confused as how I played a game that isn't out yet.
You keep saying it's
complicated.
Not out.
We'll talk about it. But just to wrap up, the other research, so I interviewed two people, which was fun.
Right.
And then the other research is the normal internet stuff. But like, there's just so much content about this out here. In fact, the amount of content was like, I was talking to you about this earlier, like with some of our other topics, the challenge was finding out about this stuff.
Right.
With this, there's just so much information out there that the challenge was sorting it into something like discussable.
Right. You had a hard time cutting this down to even be able to
and there's stuff I'm leaving out.
Of course.
Yeah. There's a lot of places where I don't actually cite anything or say this is where I found this. So I just want to do it now. Wikipedia, Reddit, YouTube, CIG's own website, the Star Citizen Wiki, Twitter, many articles, some forum visits, and even a slight short detour to IMDb are all sources that I use for this. Yeah.
Why is IMDb involved?
If we have time to talk about it, we will.
Okay. You can also tell me in our personal lives.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can post it in the show notes or something, just in case we run out of time, which I'm still worried about. So that was the research bit. I just wanted to kind of tell you guys how I researched this topic and why it's relevant to me personally this time.
You did actual work.
I know, it was weird. I hate doing work typically. But yeah, and then we've talked about the crowdfunding and how extreme the dollar amounts are and why. But what exactly was funded? You've asked this a few times now. What is Star Citizen?
Yeah, what's the game? If the game doesn't exist, but
what
you played it, how do?
Okay, where to start? So we mentioned this a little bit, but this is a really important part of the meta narrative here, is that Star Citizen is ambitious.
Okay.
Insanely ambitious.
Yeah, you said that they're trying to please all gamers all the time.
It may actually be easier to talk about what it isn't than what it is. But let's talk about what it is.
That's terrifying.
The most concise I can possibly be is to just say it is a sci-fi simulator.
Okay.
It's simulating a sci-fi experience.
Okay.
But I have a laundry list of the features and systems and things that CIG wants to include in their game.
Please hit me with this list.
Yeah, okay. It's long, so gear up. First and foremost, well, I don't know about foremost, but first on my list anyway, is that it's an MMO. Okay. Which, for listeners that, again, are not gamers, MMO stands for Massively Multiplayer Online. And typically they are persistent worlds, which that's what this game is as well. And persistent world is to differentiate a game. So, you may think of a single player game as being, okay, when I play it, I'm in the world, and when I'm not playing it, the world goes away. I shut the program down.
Right.
For a persistent world, there's a world that's there whether you're logged into it and playing it or not.
Right. It's like World of Warcraft.
It's just like World of Warcraft. So like whether you're logged on to WoW or not, the world's there. The characters in the world are running around. There's other players there doing their thing.
Right.
You may have stuff that's just sitting there, but if you're not logged on, it's there whether you are or not.
Right.
So that's what persistent world means, is it persists when you're not logged in. So it's that, and it's a persistent world that will include multiple star systems with multiple planets, which can have multiple moons and multiple space stations. And then the planets and sometimes moons can have cities or multiple cities or sites on them.
That's already too much. That's too much.
That's number 1.
That's too much. No, there can't be more than that. That's the end. That's the end of the list.
Sit tight.
Oh, jeez.
It's a first-person shooter with full, quote, fidelity. So fidelity is like a word that's very popular for Chris Roberts to use when talking about his game. He loves to talk about fidelity. It's like a kind of an inside term. It's like you know, their own nomenclature.
What does it mean?
When he says fidelity, I mean,
he
uses
like
it to mean
verisimilitude, or
yeah, actually, that's basically what he means. Is that he means like realism and detail when he says that, right?
Okay.
So when he says full fidelity first person shooter, it means the other thing it means is like you're not abstracting out pieces, you're not modeling things, you're more like giving it to the player to do. Okay. So like, you know, like a full fidelity experience shooting a gun would be like you have to load it, and then you have to like cock the hammer, and then you have to pull the trigger and do the safety.
So right? Like a Red Dead Redemption type.
Yeah, that's a good example. So Red Dead Redemption,
where you
have to like brush your horse and like, you know, talk nice to it, and it dies if you don't feed it. That's like full fidelity, right? So he wants his game to be like that. So first person shooter, and I'm talking like legit, like you are in first person, and you have guns and you have equipment, and I've seen the loadout screen, like, you know, full like armor and weapons and everything. So it's that. But 3, it's also a space combat simulator that goes all the way from the smallest fighter ships, so like X-Wings and TIE fighters, all the way to giant interstellar battleships doing like, you know, like Star Destroyer type stuff. There are space stations, but in terms of what a player can own, it's more like you can own a Star Destroyer all the way down to like a TIE fighter.
But also it's a first-person shooter.
But it's also a first-person shooter. And actually, I'm putting this as its own number 4, because that connection between 2 and 3, between first-person shooter and space combat simulator, it's basically fully realistic. So when I say no abstraction layer, you may think that like, okay, I go from one game mode to the other, and there's like some loading screen in between. So like now I'm in the first person, I'm shooting a gun, I'm running around, and then I press a button, and now I see a loading screen, and I have to wait for a second, and then now I'm in a ship flying around in space.
Right.
No, my friend. Here's how you go from first-person shooter to flying around in space. You walk to your ship, and then you get into it via an elevator, and the ship is full size. And then you can walk around in the ship, and then you sit down at the controls in the ship, and then you use the controls in the ship to fly the ship around space. And when you're in hyperspace, you can walk around your ship and like do stuff in it. And then you get to a planet, and then you're at the planet. So
this isn't a game. This is just like recreating life.
Reality. Yeah. Basically. Yeah.
What's the game?
Well, I had that same question, as a matter of fact. But let's continue through this list. Let's keep bulldozing through. So on top of those sort of like primary, I would call them maybe features, there's also a whole complex player-driven economy. Just like, so remember I was talking about Eve, and like Eve is like an economy game? They basically want to have Eve in this game too. Like all sorts of economy stuff, real ships being destroyed for value. So like if you have a big ship that you've like spent a lot of time in game, like, you know, earning.
Right.
It can be blown up.
No.
Yep.
No.
Yeah. 6. Remember I talked about procedural generation in No Man's Sky? Well,
Please don't tell me. No.
They have procedural generation here too. So not, as far as I'm aware, they don't procedurally generate planets and stars, but they do procedurally generate quests. Oh yeah, there's a quest system. So like, you know, go collect, you know, 10 alien stomachs from, Centauri 3. And that whole thing is procedurally generated. So like the game will say, do this quest that has this criteria. Oh, I'm not done.
How many do you have? Okay. How many are there? How many laundry list?
Oh, only 13. And we're on 6.
Okay.
Number 7 is all kinds of PvP. So like when you're out in space doing the flying around thing that I was talking about,
right.
You can engage in combat with other people. You can, do your space shooting and blow up his ship, and he can blow up your ship, and maybe there's pirates that can like take your stuff, and then you get mad at him later when you're on the space station, so you can like do your first person shooter and be like, screw you, man, and like shoot him in your first person shooter version of the game.
So this is every game.
It's just all the games.
It's all the games,
but in space.
In one thing.
And I mentioned pirating, so this is number 8. They want to include all kinds of different mechanics. So they want to include mechanics for smuggling. So like so they have like a customs system where like you can like get past customs or not if you're a smuggler. And they want to have, and not all this is implemented, by the way. In fact, most of it's not. But they want to have systems for pirating, mining, being a medic, and more as far as I'm aware. But those are the main things that I wrote down from one of my interviews.
Okay. Number
9, there's a city that, and this is like, I guess number 9, maybe I'm getting a little generous with the numbering here, because I already talked about cities, but I just want to like emphasize how detailed these cities are. Like, it's not like, it's not even like World of Warcraft detail. It's far beyond that. It's like, there's a city that I saw that was basically Blade Runner Los Angeles. Like it was.
Wait, you saw it in the game? That doesn't exist?
Yeah, I saw it in the game that doesn't exist. Yeah. I mean, just fully detailed. Like when you land your starship there, you land at like the starport, and you have to like sit on like a subway to get to the city for like 3 minutes. And then the city is like this big, huge, like industrial, like dystopian. Yeah. And then there are space stations so that's like Blade Runner. Okay. And there are space stations that look like Star Trek or Star Wars.
Like, are they supposed to look like these things?
I don't know if they're like direct references or if they're just like sci-fi tropes.
Right.
But it has all of the tropes, I guess is what I'm saying, depending on where you go. And there are this is number 11, there are different manufacturers in-game for different styles of ships. Again, taking from all sorts of sci-fi tropes. So there's like, so Robert Space Industries is one of them, and they make ships that are kind of like industrially looking, I think. I might be wrong about that. And then there's like another manufacturer in-game that makes ships that have a style that are like very like 2001-y, where it's like white with like clean lines and like, smooth curves. They have all different styles for ships. 12, there will be player housing at some point.
What does that mean?
Player housing. You'll have your own house. Every single player will have their own house, or the ability to get one. Anyway.
In the game?
Yeah, somewhere.
Okay. Not IRL.
No.
They're making a commune.
No.
But you can have a house.
In the game. Yeah.
Game.
That's a common request, by the way, for MMOs. Like, that was like a long time request for WoW that ended up leading to, for those of you that are WoW fans, that request sort of like transmogrified into the garrison system.
Okay.
The problem is that it's hard to give that many players housing when you're trying to build a unique world.
Millions of players.
Exactly. Like, it's like, where do you put them? Like, what if there's a new player? What if they abandon? There's this. I mean, it's a very complex system. Like, player housing is not small. And here's number 13. They're making a whole separate single player game, a different game, a second game, and I think they're pretty close. And it's in universe. It's called Squadron 42. And it's supposed to set up the events that lead to the time period in which you're playing the Star Citizen MMO.
Okay.
And it's not small. Here are a list of the voice actors in this separate single player game. And by the way, their appearance is pretty much identical to the actual actors. Like if you actually look at the CGI, they basically look exactly like them. Here's
the list.
Why
you were on IMDb?
Here's the list. Part of it. Mark Hamill. Gary Oldman. Gillian Anderson. Mark Strong. Andy Serkis. John Rhys Davies. And for good measure, they also have Sir Davos from Game of Thrones. I forgot his real name.
These are all huge people.
These are all A-listers.
Huge. Mark Hamill?
Yeah. Gary Oldman.
Gillian Anderson?
Mm-hmm.
How?
And that's just for their single player game that is basically like a setup for the world.
Okay, I really want to play this.
It's like a triple A, quadruple A game. It's insane.
If a movie had all of those people in it, it would be
it
like,
would be
whoa!
big time. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And so that's that's my list of game features. I'm probably forgetting stuff. I'm definitely forgetting stuff.
Right.
Which is just to say that the scale and scope of this game is just unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
I believe that.
So why are we talking about a video game on this on Cult or Just Weird?
Yeah, I'm really. I mean, I guess I kind of get a little bit of the like infrastructure you're going for, but yeah, please explain.
Yeah, you can probably see the smoke on the horizon, but let's go closer to the fire. So the first thing is to say is that money makes things happen.
Right.
Lots of money makes things happen quickly. But an absurd Scrooge McDuck amount of money makes things get weird. And with Star Citizen, basically all of that money was obtained in this like strange space of like pledging, not investing or buying.
Right.
So, and the thing is, you know the deal up front when you get into this, right? Like, you know, okay, it's just a pledge. I know.
Right. Nothing might happen.
But like, to some degree, it doesn't matter that the pledgers know the terms of their pledge up front. It's still a strange space to occupy when you're essentially what you're doing is purchasing hope. Right. Right. So that generates some strange stuff, right? That's what drives this strange behavior of, Citizen Nation. I don't know if you want to call it that still, but the company, the fans, all the interested parties, that's what kind of drives this weird behavior. But let's talk about the behavior itself. Starting, as I think we're wont to do, and in fact, one of my interviewees suggested we started this way, with our aforementioned charismatic leader, Mr. Chris Roberts.
I've never heard of this person, and I'm so excited.
He's quite the person.
Oh, man.
So here's his Wikipedia intro. Chris Roberts, born May 27th, 1968, is an American video game designer, programmer, film producer, and film director. He created the Wing Commander series while at Origin Systems and is now working on the crowdfunded space simulator Star Citizen. That's his intro.
So he's just a renowned artist in the entertainment sphere?
Sort of.
What films has he directed?
So I'm glad you asked, but let's talk about it in order of his life. He's been working on games for a very long time, obviously. Okay. So remember earlier, actually, when I mentioned that he was one of the big reasons why their crowdfunding drew so much money, I was like, he legitimized it. Yes. Well, a big part of that was his reputation as the guy who made Wing Commander.
I've never heard of this.
So that was one of the games they mentioned just a second ago in the intro on Wikipedia. Wing Commander was successful enough. It's funny, I have a note here. Successful enough that you may have heard of it. So maybe not.
Well, I don't know anything.
But it is famous, though. Back in the early 90s, the flight sim game genre was very popular. So, flying World War II planes or 747s.
That was a thing?
Oh, yeah. It was super popular. But Wing Commander was basically the first really actually good flight sim set in space. Okay. It's still extremely highly regarded. It was one of those industry-changing products. It directly influenced things that came after it. It basically was... Without it, you wouldn't have things like, did you ever hear of TIE Fighter or X-Wing? Yeah, so X-Wing and TIE Fighter wouldn't exist without Wing Commander. And each of those franchise, they had multiple published titles and were extremely successful on their own. Okay. Wouldn't be possible without Wing Commander.
Gotcha.
So I don't know if you remember from a minute ago, the intro said he created Wing Commander series while at Origin Systems. Yeah. Fun fact, if anybody is an EA fan or has tried to play SimCity or whatever, you might recognize the name Origin. Origin was later acquired by EA, after he left, and became their publishing platform. So publishing platform is basically like Steam or Battle.net if you're a gamer. If you're not a gamer, it's like iTunes, but for games. Right. And so it's like EA's own branded iTunes. It's like, here's where you need to log on to this thing and buy EA games. Okay. So that's what Origin is for them. But back in the day, it was the company that made Wing Commander, which I thought was really bizarre.
That is bizarre.
I know EA acquired it and eventually made it their publishing platform. I really don't understand, actually. Like, I don't know if they like turned the people that they acquired at Origin into developers for a platform, or if they just like rebranded, like they just kept the brand.
Right.
Like, but it's the same. They acquired it and made it like, I don't know how, but they did. It's like one of the weird things with this story.
Okay.
So anyway, Roberts left Origin. So he left in 1996, and then he founded his own company called Digital Anvil. A lot of this now is from Wikipedia, by the way, this piece. So he found Digital Anvil with a bunch of people. He was like a co-founder with a lot of people, including his brother, Aaron Roberts. This fledgling studio set up shop in Austin, Texas, and worked pretty quietly for several years. And then finally they got a publishing deal. Well, actually, I guess 1 year. Sorry. Got a publishing deal with Microsoft in 1997. You may have heard of Microsoft.
No, I haven't. Please explain.
Roberts had stated that he desired to produce films as well as games with Digital Anvil.
Okay. That's a bit of a crossover. They're not the same thing.
No. So in 1999, the feature film release of Wing Commander was directed by Roberts himself. That's one of the ways I thought you might have maybe heard of it, is that they made a movie out of it.
No, I have not heard of this.
And it was starring Freddie Prinze Jr.
Wait, so it was like a legit thing?
Oh, it was like a legit movie, yeah.
Not that like Freddie Prinze Jr. is the most legit actor of all time, but he's
but it was definitely like a legit
real
movie,
thing, right?
Yeah, and it was featuring visual effects from Digital Anvil. However, it failed to get either critical or financial success. Like it was
shocking,
panned pretty hard and did pretty poorly.
Well, video game movies have a tough road ahead. They don't usually do well,
right? So
that makes sense.
So Digital Anvil's first finished game was a game called Starlancer.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, generally Wikipedia says favorable critical reception. That was released in 2000. And the company was later acquired by Microsoft. And then at that point, Roberts left the company. I'm not sure why. Maybe he was cashing out after the acquisition. I don't know. But he basically abandoned the director position of his ambitious next project, which was called Freelancer.
Okay.
And this game was actually referred to by one of my interviewees as The Roots of Star Citizen. But Roberts remained with the game Freelancer in a consulting role for a little while. The game was commonly regarded as vaporware, which,
what does that mean?
If you don't know what vaporware means, it's basically like unfulfilled promise software. So it's like, we're going to release this software and it's going to be awesome. And everybody's like, okay, I'm excited.
Right.
When's it happening?
Right.
What about now? One of the most famous game examples for that is the sequel to Duke Nukem that was like I think it's out now, but it took like decades. And it was just like a bunch of unfulfilled promises. But the reason for that is it was commonly regarded as vaporware due to its promised release date of 2001. And then it, didn't hit that. But it was eventually released. It was released in 2003 with a markedly different feature set than the initial plans. However, it did get a favorable Metacritic score of 85%. So caveat to caveat to caveat. After leaving Digital Anvil, Roberts founded another company, Point of No Return Entertainment, planning to produce films, television, and games. Notice games is listed third, but no projects actually came out of that company.
How does he keep founding companies then?
So he founded another one called Ascendant Pictures and served as a producer for a number of Hollywood productions. And here's the list: Edison, Timber Falls, Outlander, Who's Your Caddy, The Big White, Ask the Dust, and Lucky Number 11 and Lord of War. I've only heard of those last two. Okay,
literally none of those things exist except for the last two.
That's what I thought.
Those are all fake.
In 2005, and this is all relevant, by the way, actor Kevin Costner sued Ascendant Pictures for breach of contract on an unreleased film. And that company later got acquired by a company called Bigfoot Entertainment.
Okay, I've heard of them.
And that's in 2010. And then in 2011, Roberts founded Cloud Imperium Games, which brings us back to the top of the story, where CIG begins crowdfunding Star Citizen in 2012.
I have to say, I have literally no idea how business works. It seems like this gentleman
I don't either.
Has founded 4,000 companies, and you'd think that you would need like massive success to be able to just like found company after company after company, or you would have to be Billy McFarlane.
He's like Billy McFarlane if Billy McFarlane made one of the most beloved games of all time.
Okay.
So that's the thing. When you say massive success, Wing Commander was a massive success. It was a genre-defining game.
But should it carry you through this far? Like,
I mean, it has.
So interesting.
One of my interviewees also described Mr. Roberts as a televangelist for gaming because he does interviews and speaks directly to his fans and is basically a top-notch vision salesman. So that's kind of an answer to your question of like, how do you keep founding companies and getting people? So he's just really good at selling his vision.
My question is, was the phrase televangelist used as a like a positive or a negative?
Yes.
Okay. I guess that makes sense.
But he summarized Roberts in this way. Basically, he said, Star Citizen's Kickstarter would not have been a thing without him. He's extremely ambitious, convinced many people to give him money before, and he's shipped a genre-defining game.
He's Billy McFarlane with a major success.
With a major success, right. So anyway, yeah, you have this guy who's basically a legendary game creator who made Wing Commander, and his new company is selling this huge, ambitious dream of a game to an audience that feels underserved and thirsty for something like it. And, all those Wing Commander fans.
Right.
The ones who played it as kids and teenagers in the early 90s.
Right.
All those computer nerds that were playing a space sim.
Right.
All those computer nerds in 2012 are all grown up with high-paying computer nerd jobs.
So that's where all this $200 whatever million comes from.
So when a childhood this guy made one of my beloved games from my childhood is selling a dream that you feel like thirsty for in your adulthood.
Right.
And you have a high paying job as a coder or something.
Right.
You're going to spend money on it.
It would be like if Steven Spielberg only made Jurassic Park and then 10 years later he was like, hey, crowdfund my Jurassic Park sequel. Like, we would have all given that $10 gazillion.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I get it.
Yep.
I get it.
Yeah, and especially you cross-section that with the type of people that were playing Wing Commander who are now probably working in Silicon Valley.
Right.
You can see where some of this perfect storm for funding kind of came from.
Right.
Speaking of the fan base, it's probably time we talked about them for a little bit. So transitioning from Mr. Roberts to the fans of his game. Since if we are in fact dealing with a cult, they would be the cultists, so we should probably talk about them. The followers, pardon me, Citizen Nation. So here's the thing, and this is super important, and in fact it's so important that I almost made the theme of this episode around this. But fan bases for everything under the sun can get really weird and culty.
Right.
This is not just a Star Citizen thing. In fact, I virtually guarantee you, our listeners, that we'll do another episode on a fan base at some point in the future.
Literally every fan base can veer into that cult. Look at sports, look at movies, look at TV, look at fucking Comic-Con, comic books, everything that has, we're watching YouTube videos about roller coaster enthusiasts. I'm sure there's some weird behavior in even the most of niche fan bases.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not unique to Star Citizen. What amps it up and gives it the particular flavor for Star Citizen, though, is the combination of these four things, I think. Is the massive amount of money pledged to the project, the weird nature of pledges being risking your money on a hope and a dream, not buying something.
Right.
And then we've only sort of hit on this with sort of some of Chris Roberts' history and whatnot, but the fact that, and maybe you might have been able to tease this out just by looking at the dates, it's 2019 and we're talking about the crowdfunding getting started in 2012.
Right.
But number 3 is the fact that despite having more money than most Hollywood blockbusters, a somewhat playable game took years longer than the backers were told in the original crowdfunding pitch.
How long were they told?
I believe they were told 2014 for the full game.
2 years, and there's there's no full game yet.
No, there's no full game yet. Not even close.
So,
and then add number 4 to that, the crazy scope and scale of the game.
The scope of this game sounds like what was promised in the Firefest situation.
Kind of, yeah.
It sounds and there's going to be a private jet for everyone, and a private villa for everyone, and a private model for everyone, and a private chef for everyone.
Serving dinosaur meat.
And it's going to simultaneously be a festival experience while also being a tropical vacation, and also a marketing thing, and
also a cultural defining something.
Right.
Something.
It's literally everything to the point where you're this doesn't seem possible, but the fact that you're promising it to me so vehemently makes me believe that it's possible.
Yeah. So that's the thing that kind of makes this different than your normal sort of and every fan base has something different that makes it unique. That's what it is for Star Citizen, is this crazy amount of money being thrown around, the scope and the scale, and all the delays. So that gives you this fan base that So, I mean, I do want to mention, by the way, that like other fan bases, like most of it is just normal everyday folks that are interested in the game.
Right.
It's just like regular fans, just like you and I are like
sure.
regular fans of Marvel stuff. But then there's some people that get really crazy about it. Like, that's just like with everything, like Star Citizen's like that too. But of course, they don't make the noise or the headlines.
Right. It's
the people I interviewed,
fans versus super fans.
Exactly. The people I interviewed were pretty much normal fans.
That's kind of a bummer.
I know. I don't have any like totally psychotic friends, or at least not in that way.
We got to make some.
I know. Well, most of my friends are psychotic in different ways. So, but yeah, so you have this smaller group though that has this, that's this, like you say, super fans, and they have this like weird schizophrenia of like skeptics. Mm-hmm. So like those are the people basically who think it'll never happen.
Right.
And they're driven by feelings of disillusionment and betrayal. And then what the community calls white knights, who are basically the true believers. And it feels to me like a little bit like both sides can act a little strange.
Sure.
The skeptics less so, because like they have a pretty good reason to be skeptical at this point, because it's been so long and the promises have been so, the differential between like expectation of promises and what's been delivered has been so large. So they're, they kind of have a good point, but then they also get like pretty upset. But the true believers, from my research, are what really drive the narrative that outsiders see as a cult. So like when so there's been like a Forbes article and like a
seriously
Reddit post that'd be like, I think the title of the Forbes article was like, Star Citizen may not be a scam, but it feels like a cult. And so that's what drives that, is these sort of like true believers that basically react to people generating questions about the game, people being skeptical about parts of it and saying like, well, like, are we going to see this feature anytime soon? Like anybody that sort of like generates any sort of question about the game, these true believers basically can come in and be like really aggressive and harass and like not tolerate any criticism of their beliefs and their leader. And you're just trying to attack Chris Roberts and he's like, has this vision and blah, blah, blah. And
like
it's
Billy McFarlane and Ja Rule.
Right. Yeah. And it's that we just watched the Firefest doc in case that wasn't clear to us. But that's what makes, reporters and outsiders and people looking in at this say, is this a cult? Like these guys are like not tolerating any dissent, and it's you're either with us or you're against us, and it's very insider outsider.
Right. That's very like dogmatic about,
Mm-hmm.
especially because it's about something weird. It's about a video game, not like a belief system.
Right.
That's kind of what feels like almost more culty than if it were like a religion or a belief system.
Right.
Like, this is about a video game, dudes. Like,
right.
Not that video games are unimportant or not something to be passionate about, but it's just interesting to see people get so dogmatic about entertainment.
Right. But you can see why it happens, though.
Absolutely.
Which brings us back to the money versus expectation thing, right? It's not just a video game for a lot of these guys. A lot of these guys have given their pound of flesh, some of them to the tune of several $1,000s. Jeez. I mean, there's people that have like donated like $30,000. Like, there's some crazy backers.
That's just like Firefest.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the last time I'll talk about Firefest.
This is actually an episode about Firefest, not Star Citizen.
Well, we're just trying to kill two birds with one stone.
Right. But yeah, so those people have donated a lot of money, and it's not only like a sunk cost thing. So like, I mean, that's obvious, right? Like I have the sunk cost. So like I'm super motivated to like defend it and, sit here and talk about how I want it to be real. But it's not just that. It's also that like there's this sense of desperation a little bit that if it doesn't work, they'll never see their dream realized. Because they've seen things like No Man's Sky and they know that there's not anybody else working on a game like Star Citizen, and like this is it, right? So like
that's so sad.
If we don't make this happen, then like I'm not going to get to play a game like this. Like it's done. Like that market's over.
Yeah.
Which it is legit. That is sad.
Right.
And then on top of that, and you add in these folks who are in for so much money, they've gotten some really nice in-game rewards.
Right.
So they've gotten like these like awesome ships for donating. So like the more it's going to be real, the more they're going to get their reward. And then finally, they get a lot of community and social status out of it, right? So like as a part of this community who's like backed it for a lot and has these awesome ships and is like a prominent Star Citizen in the game.
Right.
if it goes away, maybe they're like not that important in the real world. So like,
stop making this sad.
Well, I'm just saying like that motivates you to be a true believer, right? Like that's what generates this stuff. So it's like very understandable actually. So like, yes, it's just a video game, but it's actually so much more.
That's a beautiful sentiment.
It's so much more. Buy Star Citizen now. I'm being paid. No, but yeah, so people really get into this game. Like even like the sort of like quote unquote normal fans, it generates a lot of interest from people. Like there's a whole Reddit community dedicated to making videos of what they hope the gameplay will be.
Like I'm interested in this. Like I kind of want to go.
Yeah.
Like,
dude, I almost got like we'll get into it.
In?
I'm like it was tempting. People on Reddit will debate what the gameplay systems will look like, and of course, CIG stirs the pot by dropping ideas and stuff into the subreddits and having community managers that interact with fans directly.
I don't know how I feel about that.
We'll talk about their community management. It is best in class. So we've talked about Mr. Roberts. We've talked about the fans now and some of their motivations. What about the game itself?
The game that doesn't exist, but also you can play it, but also doesn't exist.
Well, here's the thing. We've talked about the features and like how many there are. And I did mention that it wasn't released yet. And I also mentioned that I've played it, and you've been asking me about that all episode.
I don't understand.
So let me explain.
Please.
So there is a playable version of the game that is out there.
Okay.
Star Citizen has released their features very piecemeal in what they call modules, which is sort of like another inside baseball term. It's what they call like bits of the game, essentially.
Okay.
So they've released that piecemeal. The very first module they released, which was... Oh man, I had the year for this, but I forget when it was. I want to say 2013-ish or 2014, but it was literally just walking around in a hangar, in like a ship hangar.
Okay. Just
looking at cool starships. That was it.
That doesn't sound like a lot of fun.
That was the first module, walking around a hangar.
That doesn't sound like fun. That doesn't sound like a game. That doesn't
It
sound like
wasn't
what
a game.
Promised.
It wasn't a game. It wasn't what was promised, but it also wasn't. It was both not what was promised and also not what they promised. Like. They didn't say like, and this is the game. It was like, this is module 1. We're still working on it. It's like making games is hard. So, well, I mean, there's an element of that, which I don't go into too much, but like, you know, I read an interview that Chris Roberts did and basically was like, look, you know, there's delays in games and games cost a lot of money. But the flip side of that is that if you release a game that's like missing stuff or has bugs or is a bad player experience or looks terrible, then you get, you know, rightfully called out for that.
Right,
so,
right.
You know, so you want to try to get games to market and like, you know, get people what they pay for, but like you also have to like protect your quality. And with the ambition of a game like Star Citizen, it's like the only way that you can actually really do that is to like have delays, right?
See, this is where they did a better job than the Firefest guys. This is why they're never going to get found out, is because you can just kind of keep like putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, because Firefest
had a date
and it had like a physical location that people were going to.
Right.
Sorry, I said I would not bring Firefest up again.
Oh man, I was just gonna make fun of you for that.
But I can't.
You can't not talk about it.
I can't not talk about it, and it's because this is so similar. This is so similar in the like.
And the like
the
selling
scope
a dream,
of the promise,
scope.
the selling of the dream,
Yeah.
like this charismatic dude that you know has a lot of, you know, business acumen, but also has a lot of failure, and it's just the fact that, you know, Firefest had a lot of people being like, I don't know, like people even who were going there, I don't know, maybe this is gonna be nothing, and then also people being like, I sold all of my furniture so that I could afford a ticket, like $30,000 ticket to go to this thing. This has to be great. Like it just, there's a lot of similarities, and I think that. Obviously, it's not just Firefest. It's not just Star Citizen. This happens all the time. It feels like in you know, one way or another. We can be sold a dream very easily.
Well, I think it's just kind of like human nature to a certain degree that like, you know, we're the only species that can like imagine something and then bring it into reality.
Right.
And I think that at the scale that we're doing that now, like we're not just like making a stone axe,
right?
Like we're making these giant complex systems that like have just a tremendous amount of like execution, effort and risk and all that stuff. So like I think that's why you see stuff like that, is because like the only way to like birth a vision into the world like that is to have these like, you almost have to be a true believer at a certain point.
Right.
But yeah, so we were talking about modules. So So the first one was just walking around a hangar, and then they released like a very basic space flight sim combat module. So like you could fly around and fight with other people. At the time of this recording, they are in alpha, I believe, which backers, and I think anyone, but I'm not sure, can go play. And it is a persistent world, so they do have like their actual persistent world.
Oh.
It consists of one star system so far. But there's a couple catches. The first catch is pretty big. It's missing a ton of content. So it's missing like all of the other star systems they want to have. It's missing a lot of like characters and quests, professions, cities. There's there's just missing a ton of stuff. It's just like a playable slice, but they're missing a lot from what, for what they want to do. And then the other big catch is that this persistent world server is going to be reset at some point before the game officially launches. So like it really is just in test mode right now.
What does that mean? That means that like everything that you do in this game is not going to carry through?
Won't carry through.
So you're not actually playing the game.
So you're not, you are, but it's not, you're not for a game where it's like you have to spend a lot of effort to eventually earn a really cool starship and then fly it around and do stuff with it for a game that's based on that. And that's going to go away. Like you are technically playing it, but you're not like progressing or doing anything that, yeah. So that's why I say it really is just in test mode. And, and it's test mode. It is kind of just a big pile of unfulfilled promises so far. And it's supported only by a community of self-deluded weirdos on the internet, right?
Don't insult them.
Well, if that's what you're thinking, and that's kind of what I was thinking when I went to finally go in and play this game and see it, twist time, I could not have been more surprised.
Is it really fucking cool?
So I think I talked about this a little bit before. Remember when I talked about their plans for having like, you're walking around a space station in your first person shooter and you look at your gear and then you actually physically walk out to your spaceship, physically go into it. I saw that happen.
Really?
And actually, as before, and like walking around the space station, I mean, just fully immersion detail. Like it really did look like just, it could have been like a space station from Star Wars.
Damn.
And there were other people walking around. When he got out to the platform where his starship was,
this is your friend.
This is my interviewee. Pardon me. I mean, I guess he's also my friend, but it's a legit source.
Right.
So he showed me like, he like put on his jetpack and like flew around the platform a little bit.
What?
And then he like went back and he like flew on top of his ship.
What?
He was like, here's my ship. And then like he gets into the ship and he's like, here's the ship. I'm going to show you around. He like walks around it because it's like about this, like think of it like the Millennium Falcon, right? It's about that size.
Right.
And then he's like, okay, I'm going to go sit in the cockpit now. And then like the cockpit has like 3 seats that like 2 other players, if they wanted, could sit there.
Oh my God.
And because the ship has so many like onboard systems to manage, it's actually beneficial. So you can fly it as one person and you can like fly it around and, fire basic lasers. But if you have somebody else sitting in the side, the co-pilot seat, they can like manage the shields. And if you have somebody in the other one, they can like, fire the other gun in the back because you can't multitask.
Good God.
And there are 2 gun pods, just like the Millennium Falcon, halfway back the ship that 2 other players could like sit in and like fire those guns while you were in a space battle. So
this game wants you to foster like a sense of community. It wants you to have friends that fight with you.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah. No, it's like the game. It was crazy. Like, so, and that's, I'm not even done yet. So like he got in the ship, showed me that. Then he's like, all right, we're going to go to this planet. And then he went into like this hyperspace thing and he's like, okay, yeah, the ship's in hyperspace now. So we can get up and walk around and like show you some more stuff.
So it's like autopilot.
The ship was just in hyperspace. You could look outside and see the stars flying by or whatever. And he was like walking around and she's like, here's the engine room. And oh, here's the cargo bay. I wanted to get a ship that had like a big cargo bay because I wanted to be able to like, carry a lot of loot around and stuff. And I was like, oh my God.
Jesus Christ.
And so then he goes back and he's like, oh, I think we're almost there. So he like goes back to the cockpit and then like we arrive at the planet and then like the planet's on the screen and he's like, okay, now I got to find this. I really want to show you this city. And he finds this city and he like has to fly around the planet to find it. And again, there's no load screens at any point. Not a single load screen.
I just want to make it clear for our non-gaming listeners.
Oh, yes.
That's insane.
Yeah. So a load screen is
it's like it's when you transition from one mode of gameplay into another, from one area into another. And usually you need that because the game needs to like load this new space.
Next thing. So like think of it as like, you know, I'll give like a really crazy example. Like let's say you played a game called like Mario then Tetris, right? And so you played a level of Mario Brothers, and then you played a level of Tetris. So in between that, you would have to have a load screen to load up the Tetris game.
Right.
Well, this is basically that crazy.
Right.
You are playing two totally different games. You're playing this first-person shooter. This is just a human walking around in a suit and guns.
Right.
And then you're playing a totally different game, which is flying starships. But there's no load screen in between those two games. They seamlessly transition based on like realism.
You know what it's like? You know what that like the difference between
the world? It's like
game,
real life.
This game not having load screens and like most games having load screens.
Yeah.
It's like how crazy it was when you had Titanic on VHS and then you got Titanic on DVD. Because Titanic on VHS, it was 2 tapes. You had to like switch. You had to like put one in and then you had to like finish the last like half hour on the other one. But then Titanic on DVD was like, we got the whole movie, baby. You don't got to have no load screen. You don't got to switch nothing out.
That's the best analogy I think I've ever heard.
I mean, I'm really good at analogies. And Titanic just kind of covers the, you know, covers all the bases.
Right.
So
he flies around this planet and there's no load screen here either. He flies like into the atmosphere and like you can see the atmosphere is like heating up the front of his ship. It's like there's like this whole like, yeah. And then he flies through the clouds all the way down close to the surface. He's like, oh, there's this, I have to look for, oh, there's the city over there. Flies to the city. And then there's the city there. And then he has to land in the spaceport at the city and then physically get out of his ship, physically go through customs, physically get onto a tram that, like a subway tram that takes him to the downtown of the city. And he's like, yeah, there's some shops here. And I think they're going to put player housing here. And there's like some quests and there's like all kinds. They're trying to make it look like a real city. And I was like sitting there just like with my mouth agape.
Like I am right now.
Like you are right now. And I was just like, he showed me that. And I was just like, oh my God. This game that is like, I've heard and read it's like an unreleased game and it's missing like 80% of its feature set, which it is.
Right.
Because the feature set is so ambitious, but it's still like one of the most impressive pieces of video game content I've ever seen.
Okay, I want to play it. Can you help me play this?
We definitely can. I have some footage I can show you, but the guy that was showing me this, like, it was interesting because he told me like he was a major skeptic too for a while. Because like I said, like at first it was like, you can walk around a hangar, that's it.
Right.
But he says the things that he's seen with this game now and the tech that they're building for it says that he's been converted. Which
sounds like flat earther to me.
It does.
Like, I was a skeptic,
but it was all in good fun. So the thing is with people that are, you know, not nut jobs that are like fans of it, because like both people I talked to sort of had this. Is like, yeah, the community knows that there's like this stigma attached to it of like, oh my God, we're all crazy and we're all paying for stuff that we don't have. I think for the majority of people, they know it and they're like, you know, I'm paying for the hope. I'm paying to hopefully bring this thing into existence because I want it to exist. And I might as well. I
mean, that's just capitalism. Like, it's literally what I was talking about earlier today, where I was like, we have all this tea that we never drank. And it's just because it was fun to buy it, thinking like, ooh, I'm going to drink this tea and get the benefits of this tea and like be all cozy. Like, you don't actually have to have the actual event in order to get the enjoyment from the purchase.
Right. So it was, so even though he used the word converted, like they know the deal. It was all in good fun. Like he's not a totally crazy devotee person. Like he was just kind of like, I think he just liked to embrace the, you know, the stigma a little bit because it's interesting and funny. So so it was just incredibly impressive. And it made me ask this question, of my friend. I said, "What do you even do in this game?" It was actually the question you asked me earlier, right? I was like,
"What's the game?
What is the game? Like, it's so huge. It just kind of feels like Second Life in space. You could do anything,
right?
You just like, because literally, I was so enthralled, and all he did was like travel.
Right.
That's all he did.
That's not a game necessarily.
Yeah, and his answer was very interesting. He said they want this game to be as much of your life as you want it to be. And backers hope that it's their one game that they play for the rest of their lives.
Okay, that's a little...
One or primary.
That's a little creepy. Like, I'm a little creeped out by that.
You should be.
I don't want
I was creeped out by it, too.
I don't want anything I buy. I don't want the company to be like, this is the only one. We are the only one.
So the backers say that. Like, he says that they're frequently backers will say, like, I want this to be, like, my game, man. Like, this is the game that I just want to play.
Okay.
The company is the one... I think he says that the company says they want this to be as much of your life as you want it to be.
That's still a little creepy to even have a company say that. I don't know. It's just a little creepy.
It's possible they didn't say that. I'm just going off the interview here. I think that's... I probably should have like double checked on that.
Well, it's creepy that sentiment is part of the community.
Sure.
At all.
Yeah.
Like,
Let's call it part of the community and maybe the company supports it. But honestly, it's not even limited to this game if you think about it. Like other games, like we talked about World of Warcraft, they ask similar amounts of engagement from their players,
True.
right? Like World of Warcraft says like, oh yeah, you got to play this game for like, a good chunk of your day if you want to be good at it.
Right.
So, like that's, I don't think that's good, but it's not limited to Star Citizen.
Right. That's not the only game that has that mentality or has that byproduct.
Would you like to take a look at some game footage?
Yeah.
So I brought it up here on YouTube. So here's them just like walking around a station. So just for our listeners.
That's gorgeous.
So yeah, this is the city. No, sorry. This is the city that they're in.
That's fucking beautiful.
This is daytime in the Blade Runner city.
This is not what I was expecting.
I know, right? Like this
looks real.
Right. When you think like the game's not real, you don't think this.
Like this looks like a AAA game.
Yeah, it is. So let me see if I can get you some of the...
Like it's not...
So this is them in their like character loadout screen. So they're like looking at like their armor, and this is the ship that they have. The ship that I saw was much bigger than this.
Okay.
But this is just like, see how they're just getting into the ship?
Oh my God. There's no load screen. Oh my God.
They're just getting into the cockpit.
Holy shit. Holy fuck.
And now they're about to take off. And you can go to an external camera, but you see how it's, and now here's the actual, so this whole screen here is functional. This dashboard that you're seeing that has like all of these like buttons and all of these graphs are actually reporting things about this ship.
No. Like
its level of shields or its energy or whatever. And like over here is like the ship's shields. So I don't know how long it takes her to lift off here.
This is insane.
Let me try to zip a little bit. Okay, so now the hangar, the pod bay doors are opening, Hal. And I think she's about to take off here, hopefully.
I mean, don't worry, I can cut out whatever. It doesn't need to be real time.
Okay.
Oh my God!
Yeah. Yeah, so you can go to a third-person camera when you're in the ship.
I have never seen a game do something like that.
No,
even a little game.
I haven't either. And again, all totally seamless. There's
Good Christ.
Yeah. And then you can...
This is what people who were watching the Titanic DVD, this is what they felt like.
I'm sure they did. And then you can fly this thing. We won't bore our listeners with like a whole, 40-minute video, but you can fly this ship that she's flying. Like you can fly it out into space. If it has like the warp drive thing, you can fly it to other systems. You can land on a star base. It's totally out of control.
I think I'm...
See all these buildings? That's not like skybox or background. Like there's people down there. Like doing things.
I think I'm a convert. I think I'm part of Citizen Nation.
I think you became part of the cult. I think I did too. I don't know.
I want to play this game. Let's give it money.
I know, right?
I want to play that game.
That was the turn, man. Like I was like all ready to be like, man, this is nuts. And then he showed me the game, and I was like, what the fuck?
That's not Billy McFarlane.
No,
that's real. That's if Firefest, like even a quarter of Firefest happened.
So before we conclude, I want to talk a little bit, though, about CIG's community management and business practices.
Oh, you did say that.
Yeah, I think that aside from the bonkers gameplay itself, this is actually where their true genius lies.
Interesting.
So I mentioned this earlier. CIG realized early on that they had a massively engaged community.
Right.
And don't forget, this is the community they had and was giving them a shit ton of money before the thing I just showed you existed.
Right,
when
right.
When it was just
a
concept
pipe
art.
Dream, yeah.
Yeah. And they've leveraged that really well. And a big part of that leveraging strategy for them is that they are probably the most transparent game dev studio out there by an order of magnitude from what I've seen. Like, incredibly transparent.
That is not what I would expect.
I know. One of the craziest things I've seen, But it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, though, right? Because like, if you're transparent, then you give people more to work with,
right?
To be like, hey, what the hell, right? So one of the craziest things I've seen that they do is they expose their whole roadmap on their website. And a product roadmap, for those of you that don't know, is typically like an internal company planning tool. Like nobody would ever see that outside of a company.
Right. Like I don't even know what that is.
And then on top of it basically says like, it's just like a really high level like calendar of like, we're going to do this general big thing here and then this general big thing there. But they go way more detailed than that. They actually have product milestones, and their project management software like actually is hooked up and exposed on their website. So they use Jira, which a lot of software companies use, and it's basically like a task management system. So like
to hear that is like as insane as watching what we
I know.
watched.
That's what I said. Dude, when I was shown that, I was like, are you kidding me? It's like literally their internal task management system that they use for like day-to-day, like, all right, what's the next thing I have to build? Okay, I'm going to record that, and the status on that is active or complete, or, transferred down the line to, to Bob from, graphics to add the graphics.
Like, think about
all of that is exposed on their website to the public.
Like, think about the fact that, like, we have companies that are so opaque that they have to, like, be questioned in front of Congress just to get, like, some info.
Yeah.
And then to have that, the complete polar opposite, that's crazy.
It's bonkers, yeah. So they also have a weekly YouTube show where they talk about the development of the game, which, funny story, like this show became big all by itself. Like everything that's a game, I guess, just becomes big and huge. And that they wound up selling subscriptions to fund production of their weekly show.
Jesus Christ.
Which, think about the implication of that. They are charging fans to build not just the game now, but engagement with the game.
Yeah.
That's like unprecedented, very 2019.
Is that insidious or is that genius?
Both, I guess. I don't know. And they're very careful to call their fans backers and not players. They're very careful with their language.
Of course.
Because they want them to feel like they have skin in the game.
Right.
At the end of every one of those shows, those weekly shows, they say, we couldn't have done it without you.
This is getting a little creepy again.
I know, right? It's like it keeps going back and forth. It's the same feeling I had doing this research.
This is like watching Making a Murderer. Ping-ponging. Did he do it? Did he not?
They have a community forum on their website they called Spectrum, which is like its own big, huge feature. You can access it from the web and also from in-game. So when you're in the game, you can like go to the community forum and like make a post. And that's the same posts that people see on the web.
Okay.
It's not separated. There's a Discord channel. There are...
I'm getting on the Discord channel now.
I went to it. It was pretty dead when I went there. Well, no, that's not true. The channel I went to was like, it was pretty dead. But I could see that there was a lot of activity on their Discord channel. And again, for listeners, Discord is like...
it's a chat. It's a chat room.
Yeah, it's just like a chat room. It's just very popular with gamers. They also have regular and frequent real-life meetup groups called Bar Citizen.
Can we go?
I wanted to go to one of them and I ran out of time.
We can still go.
I also didn't want to be like a lurker. We totally can. Like they happen all the time.
Oh my God.
And in fact, there's a whole like website that's just Bar Citizen. Like there's a whole, and it's like high production value. And I shit you not, this game that's been in development for 6 years but is technically unreleased has a conference called CitizenCon.
We're going. Where is it? We're going.
I think it's at a different place every year.
I don't care. We're going wherever it is. That's the most amazing thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
How do I work for this company?
I don't know. I don't even know how I would work for the company, and like I'm in the industry, so no. I think they have some job postings.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so let's just say they place a big emphasis on community engagement, to say the least.
Okay.
And I would say that their community engagement is like almost as ambitious as their game.
Yeah, really. That sounds like a lot.
But they do all this for a very good reason, which it's like, look, community engagement is, I'm not like suggesting that they're like, the devil.
Right.
You do it for good reasons, for like staying close to your customers and players and, just generally being a good game developer. I think all of those are good reasons to do it. But it also helps the bottom line.
Sure.
So remember when I said most, and by most, the vast majority of the crowdfunding happened directly with the company and not on Kickstarter?
Yes.
And that the main mechanism for that is selling in-game ships?
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Oh, I'm scared.
So you said, oh, can I go onto their site and, donate and
Right,
pledge?
right.
You can. What you do is you go buy a ship.
But you don't necessarily get the ship.
And they're really beautiful. Like, you can go on their site and maybe I'll show you here in a second, and they have like these 3D renderings of them that you can rotate around and zoom in and out. And then you can like make like a wireframe of it. You can like say, look at only the wireframe. So you're just seeing like the cool sort of like bones of the ship. And it's just like really beautiful. And like you look at it and it's like, whoa, cool. But they're usually introduced like just as the art.
So you don't actually get a ship.
And you can buy them at this concept point. So you're basically buying what will probably be released into the game as a ship.
So you don't actually get the ship.
You get
a picture of the
but
ship.
But generally, if you're buying a ship that's like been out for a while and it's like fine or been in development for a while, then you can get the ship in game.
Okay.
But it's like really hit and miss from what I can tell of like which ships are actually released in game or not yet.
Right.
And don't forget, like the game's not technically released, so even all these ships, like you'll still get these ships when the game goes live, and in theory, if and when the game goes live, but right now, like your people are literally spending hundreds of dollars, and it's like, okay, we're probably gonna do this ship. I mean, they don't say probably; they say we're gonna. Like, it's just in development yet, but like you're paying for ship art.
I mean, people pay for other kinds of art.
Yeah, I guess totally. I mean, like I said, the ships are beautiful and the 3D art is great.
Right.
It gets better though. So remember how I said that this game wants to be a little bit like EVE Online, where there's like this dynamic economy and, you can spend a lot of money because you can't just, it's not just that you buy the ships. You can also earn them in game because you're really good at the game and you've done awesome quests and beaten the bad aliens and mined all the planets. And now you have so much money, you can buy a badass ship.
Okay.
But that ship can be destroyed.
Damn.
Right. Well, we talked about that.
But it's real world dollars.
But it's real world.
I don't think I put that together before.
Yeah. So
it's like you really pay for something and then it can go away.
Yes. So that's a big part of the game, though, is that it's like that. It gives a sense of like meaningfulness, and
right.
The risk generates a sense of thrill. I mean, that's literally what drives the entire game of EVE Online.
Right.
But for ships that you buy with real money, and this was introduced like early in the crowdfunding campaign, when they started selling ships, like even before you could walk around the hangar and look at them.
Right.
They introduced something called insurance, and for early backers that were buying early ships. So you can buy insurance. I believe you can buy it in game. Like if you want to insure your ship, it's like hella expensive, but you can buy it.
So like it can't get destroyed, or you get money.
It means if it gets destroyed, you get a copy of the ship back, basically.
Okay.
But if you were an early crowdfunder buying one of those early ships, you get what's called lifetime insurance. LTI is what they call it. So there's another vocab word that they use.
LTI.
So lifetime insurance, as you can imagine, for someone that's really invested in this game and really interested in it and excited about it, it's pretty valuable, right? Like it means that your ship isn't at risk. You can, I don't know, like you can be reckless with it, or it's not, bad. Like you can go to a dangerous planet. I don't know. Like it's not bad if it gets destroyed.
Right, right.
Lifetime insurance.
Lifetime insurance.
And they still sell those. They still sell ships that have lifetime insurance. So like some of the ships you can buy now on their site have lifetime insurance. A lot of them, though, don't. A lot of them now will have what's called like 6-month insurance. Okay. So like it's insured for 6 months. And after that, it can get destroyed just like any other ship.
Gotcha. Okay.
But there's something cool you can do, cool from a business perspective, I guess, for CGI, or CIG, excuse me, is that there's something called the upgrade system.
Okay.
So you can upgrade your ship, any ship you have. It doesn't matter like what class it is or what manufacturer or whatever. You can upgrade any less expensive ship into a more expensive ship by paying the difference. So let's say you have a $40 like fighter, and then they release a ship that's like $300 capital ship, and you're like, holy shit, I want that. It's so amazing.
Right.
So you can pay $260 to upgrade, and basically you lose the fighter that you had, and now you get this capital ship instead.
That's a pretty cool system.
But here's the trick, is that if the fighter had lifetime insurance on it, now the capital ship does too.
Ooh.
Even if you couldn't buy that ship with lifetime insurance anymore. Because it's kind of going like away. Because like if they sell everything with lifetime insurance, then like that defeats the whole purpose of, well, no, it defeats the purpose of the in-game economy, right?
Sure.
Then nobody's ships are at risk, and then you just defeat that. Who cares, right?
Right.
So that's kind of going away. But if you upgrade, you can upgrade a dinkier ship that had it to like a badass ship or a big ship. I shouldn't say they're all badass, whatever, but like a bigger ship that has a more expensive ship that has it.
Okay.
And the really cool thing about that from a business perspective is that if you think about insurance policies, like you don't pay separate for the insurance policy, it just comes with the ship.
Right.
But like an actual insurance policy changes in value depending on the thing that it's protecting.
Right.
So the insurance policy for a bigger ship is more valuable.
Right.
So if you're a player, you're sitting there going, I have this insurance on this little tiny ship. I could totally have insurance on this $300 ship though.
Right.
I better spend that $260 to upgrade.
Oh, man.
So it's like super motivating, even though all of this like insurance risk system is just like built into the game.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
That's fascinating.
So if you're wondering how they keep raising so much money, that's how. And if you're thinking that this definitely sounds like sales and not fundraising, then yeah, it sounds like that to me too. And it's actually a little fucked up.
Yeah.
Because if you go to the e-commerce section of their site, and like it has a cart and all the normal trappings of a storefront, but they keep using like the pledge terminology everywhere. So like you're not buying the ship, you're pledging and then getting the ship. And that's what lets them get away with basically selling you a picture of a starship.
Right.
It was funny, the URL for your like your cart, your actually like your checkout cart is robertspaceindustries.com/pledge/cart. So it's like, is it a cart or is it a pledge? Am I buying something? Am I at the grocery store or am I donating? I don't get it.
Right.
So it's like, they're very careful about this terminology to make sure that you're still just donating. You're still a backer. You're not buying anything.
It's creepy.
Which is what lets them get away with like, hey, it's okay. It's not released yet because we're working on it. You just pledged. It's a little weird.
Damn.
So I had like this whole section here for interesting stories because there's like so many other things that I'm leaving out about like fans and industry folks and reporters talking about the game.
Right.
I was going to read you these posts where there's these Redditors listing reasons why Star Citizen is a cult, which would have been perfect for this podcast, but like we've already kind of gone through most of them.
Sure.
I definitely recommend going and checking it out on your own.
We'll link a lot of this stuff in the show notes. Like we have to.
Oh yeah, we do.
We have to.
It's awesome.
Or we'll do a sequel.
But we're going super long, so I'll leave those out. But I do want to include this one quote I read because I just thought it was funny. There's this Greek proverb that goes, "A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in."
Right, I've heard that.
Yeah, most people have heard that. And then there's like a post by this Redditor on the Star Citizen subreddit that goes, "A game grows great when old men buy ships in whose seats they know they shall never sit." Ancient Star Citizen proverb. I just thought that was kind of funny. And then there was
it's kind of funny, and it's also like, do these people are there people who really feel that?
Well, there are, because this thread was like had a lot of replies on it, and like some people were like, haha, good post, OP.
Right. And
then some of them were like, oh man, yeah, that's true. Holy crap. Like some of them were like, oh yeah, like I'm married now, and like, my wife's pregnant, and like when this game came out, like we were just dating. Like maybe I am just going to give these ships to my kids and they're going to be able to play. Like some of them were like thinking that.
Jesus.
It was nuts. So that's Star Citizen. So I want to go back all the way to the beginning of this episode.
Okay.
Where we talked about Pascal's dilemma and
right.
what if heaven were real? What if Xenu were real? What if Flat Earth was real?
Right.
As crazy as Star Citizen is, between the funding and the charismatic leader and the delays and perceived false promises, actual false promises, that portion of the fan base that gets obsessed and insane and true believer. But what if the religion winds up being true? I mean, you saw the footage.
Right.
You heard me talk about it.
Well, the thing is here is that there's not really a negative aspect to not believing in Star Citizen until it exists, right?
Well, that's
there's
the thing,
no
right?
Hell.
Right.
Here.
Well, there's no hell, but for some of these people, it's like, I don't know, like I might as well donate, right? Pascal's dilemma. Like if I if God doesn't exist, then no harm, no foul. But if he does, then like I get this amazing game.
Right.
So that's kind of what they're thinking. But it's not just that, right? Because it's not just like, what if the mythology was real and Olympus existed and you could go to it?
Right.
It's, what if Olympus almost exists and you had the power to bring it into existence if you just gave it a bit more money?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is Star Citizen Rocco's basilisk?
Oh man, you're going to piss some people off by talking about it publicly.
Sorry. I can cut that out.
Whatever. But it's more that it's, I think, not relevant to the whole, this line of reasoning.
But it is, though.
With bringing it into existence, I guess.
Like,
right, yeah.
People are bringing this thing into existence. Like, this thing doesn't exist without the people trying to bring it into existence.
Right. Well, that's the thing about selling a dream, right? But yeah, like...
It's not like some dude just made a game. It's like these people have to believe in this game in order for it to get made.
Right. And it's not just you could bring it into existence if you gave it a bit more money. It's also like, what if you felt desperate? Like you'd been hopeful before and you'd been promised other Olympuses like No Man's Sky, and they've only disappointed you. So Olympus may never exist via somebody else's efforts in the future if this one fails.
Right.
What if your god died if you didn't feed him?
That got really dark.
Well, does any of this make it more like a cult or less like a cult? What do you think?
Both. I think it's kind of both.
Yeah. So that brings us to that point in the episode when we must answer the question. Shall I bring out the criteria?
Yeah, but what's the question?
Well, the question is it a cult or just weird?
Yeah, give me my paper.
Do you just want me to say the title of our podcast?
Yeah. So, listeners, you probably remember our criteria at this point. I'll go through them quickly, unless you want to go through them.
No, go for it. You're the reactor.
So we have 6 criteria that we have zeroed in on. 1, expected harm towards the individual in the cult.
Do you want to do it one at a time, or do you want to?
I was going to run through all of them and then evaluate.
Okay.
Population of the cult, anti-factuality, percentage of life consumed, not like vampires, but like how much time you're supposed to give to this. Ritual, and a charismatic leader. And, the more boxes you check, the more like a cult you are. So, let's go through these one by one and decide what we think. So, 1, expected harm towards the individual. That's, socially, physically, mentally, emotionally, any kind of harm that can befall you.
Yeah, you lose your job, you lose your friends.
I don't see a lot of harm here. Maybe financial.
Yeah, that was my feeling.
You haven't told me any horror stories of people who like Firefest who use their life savings to get this thing that may not exist.
I did see a few posts of people that were like, "Oh my god, I feel like I've wasted my money on this game, and I feel like I've been kind of taken.
Right.
I feel like I've been kind of defrauded." So there's definitely some people. So I think there's some harm because of that, because of this false promise getting, selling people on a dream and then it's not materializing for them necessarily.
Is that harm or is that anti-factuality?
Well, I think there's another thing that kind of comes in with the anti-factuality, but it doesn't necessarily cut you off from your family or say stop being friends with non-cultists.
Right.
So I don't think it's really that harmful, especially if you're not a true believer, if you're just a normal person that's a fan of the game. But games can have that effect though. So that's a slight caveat is that sometimes you can play a game so much again, we'll bring up World of Warcraft. Sorry, WoW, that it can cut you off from friends and family sometimes.
Well, and game addiction is a real thing.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Playing a game too much can cause you to lose sleep or, even give you something stupid as eye strain or whatever. Or you spend... You don't even realize how much money you've spent on Candy Crush because you just kind of got in that zone or because you didn't realize that the game was taking actual money from you.
Right. So it can harm you that way.
Can be harmful.
Yeah. All right. So that one's mostly no, I guess.
I think it's a 50-50? 70-30?
It feels mostly no.
80-20?
I mean, it's kind of is Star Citizen at fault for being that any game can be addictive and
right. So
I don't know.
Star Citizen, the expected harm is rarely, not never.
Right.
So number 2, population of cult. I mean, I'm assuming that this is a rather large population, given that there's
2.2 million backers.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah. So it's maybe not a cult because it's not a tiny little sect then.
Right. So that doesn't check that box.
Doesn't check that box.
But it feels like it should. Okay, But, like, are we talking relative here? Like, relatively speaking, 2.2 million people is not that large a percentage of 7 billion or whatever.
I don't know. It's pretty big compared to the other ones we've talked about.
Very, very true. Okay. Anti-factuality. Specifically a closed logical system, that kind of thing. I kind of feel like there might be a lot of anti-factuality here until you showed me that gameplay
Right? It's
video.
weird. It's like, it's hard to figure out. Because, like, I think there's definitely some anti-factuality going on.
Well, the fact that it was like, this game will be out in 2014 and we're in 2019 now and it's not anywhere close.
But they're also really transparent and they don't say that, like, oh, we lied to you. It's like, oh, you know, these are targets. Like,
but is that
production?
Is that transparency just another way to kind of like dupe people? Because it's like, oh, look at how transparent we are. Of course this is real. Of course we're going to be able to deliver the like 13 points you listed at the beginning.
Maybe. And I mean, there's also the point too of transparency, like directly serving the community engagement, which directly, you know, gets people to monetize more.
Yeah. And just the really careful word usage of like backers and pledge, like that.
Yeah.
I know that doesn't feel like anti-factuality, but it does feel a bit like
it's a little
obfuscation.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit obfuscating. And then the other thing is like the true believers, like it feels like they're engaging a little bit of anti-factuality by saying like,
right.
You are you're a heretic and get out and like you're just trying to defame so and so and that's not true and this is, you know, these ships will be real. There's a lot of like motivated reasoning there, right? That it's not so much anti-factuality as it is motivated reasoning. It's like they're not looking at the facts, they're trying to fit the facts to their highly motivated wanting to make this game be a real thing. Right. So I think that's where it kind of hits that.
Okay, so that's a maybe. Percentage of life consumed. I guess it depends, right?
Yeah,
like any
really
video
depends.
game, like it really depends.
It really depends, but like with the level of ambition and immersion and like this is just real life in space.
Right.
Like, I do think that it gets some plus points, minus point, whatever.
Well, if the like sense that is gotten from the community, whether it's just from the backers or it's from the business itself, the whole like this should be the only game that you'll ever play again. This is the only game you need. We're the only one. Like that feels kind of like give us your life.
Right. And from what I mean, from what I said and saw and what you saw from just that little brief YouTube video, like especially now imagine they had all those features that I said.
Right.
You could literally just spend your whole life playing this game.
Well, if you have to literally wait, I mean, like granted, okay, no load screens is awesome, but then that does mean like you have to wait in real time for the subway. It's like you know, Red Dead Redemption or those kind of like open world games to a crazy degree where it's not just you're playing a game, it's you're playing a game in real time. Right.
It's like the verisimilitude is cool,
but it's
up to a point.
But it's taking hours out of your life.
Right. It's like the trade-off
sitting on a subway.
Immersion with like wasting time.
Right.
You know, like you want the immersion, but you know, there's a cost.
Now, for ritual, the whole time we were doing this, I was kind of thinking like, oh, there's not really ritual until you started talking about the like community management and the weekly shows.
Yeah.
That to me is like, ooh, is that, I don't know. I mean, granted, I haven't seen an episode, so maybe they're just like really fun and cool and like anything you see on like the, you know, that game channel or whatever.
I would say maybe there's a little bit of ritual involved because it's like a regular show and, you know.
And the fact that there's very specific like words used, like
that's
calling
maybe
people
more
backers and pledge.
Backers and pledges and the use of the word fidelity and LTI.
Right.
And there's a lot of,
the specific vocab.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I'm going to say that there's, you know.
A little bit.
Charismatic leader, I think, is there in spades.
Yeah, charismatic leader. It's like funny, like that we've done 4 episodes now. And like last week was Irvine, and that was kind of the only one that it really, I think, hit really clearly on the head. It's funny that all 4 episodes, that's the one thing that they've all had as charismatic leader.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just
the first one didn't.
Yeah, it did. I mean, not like as much as...
The first one didn't have it on the live charismatic
as Mr.
leader.
Ramtha or as Mr. Roberts, but it did.
Yeah, no, you're right. They haven't been just like, you know... What is it when there's they weren't decentralized. Like none of them.
No, they weren't
been,
totally
like,
decentralized.
Yeah.
But I guess that's maybe like, I don't know. There's not many things that are, so.
Well, and just the fact that this guy has like Roberts Industries or whatever the website is, like shit named after him, and like the fact that he has this whole like Billy McFarland / successful background, and like he's the reason why this was.
And his fans love him.
His fans love him.
Like they're devoted to. I mean,
right.
And
well, just his personality is what got this off the ground to begin with. So it's like this is because of him.
Yeah,
he is a charismatic leader.
I think that's a clear hit.
So is it a cult or is it just weird? I think I'm inclined to say it's just weird. I think it has a lot of really cult-like aspects, but I think it dovetails so much with just kind of standard video game culture / fan culture that unless we're willing to say that all of those cultures are cults. Ooh, cult culture.
Cult. Ooh, man, there's a connection there.
Oh my god. Unless we're willing to say that like intense fandoms are cults, I don't know if I can call this a cult. I think it's very cult adjacent, but
it's very cult like,
but just weird.
I mean, there's a few other things like that we sort of talked about in the episode, but didn't really come up with the criteria. But there's definitely like some faith involved.
Sure.
Yeah, like so there's like. I've backed the game and I have to have faith that it's going to come to fruition. And there's some like money for nothing going on here. Right. Donate to us and everything will be good. And you'll, like it's kind of like with
that goes along with percentage of life consumed.
Right. Like, where it's like, don't give us your money and you'll get you'll get your heaven.
Right.
And there's that sort of like insider outsider dynamic too of like, if you're inside and you're part of the group, and if you're criticizing, then you're an outsider and fuck you. And, I hate you and I'm going to harass you. But on the no side, we talked about like a lot of the stuff in the criteria. And also like, I feel like the transparency it leans towards no, because I feel like cults aren't transparent.
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. I think that can be faked. And
not from what I understand how it works though with them.
And I think that can be, that can almost be like a manipulation tactic where it's like, we're going to legitimize it. There's no way you can think that this isn't real because we've made it so real, but it's not real. The game is not out and it's been 7 years.
I mean, the thing is,
as transparent as they want to be, they're not making a game. The game is not out. So how transparent is it really?
But you saw it. It is. Like, it is and it isn't, right?
What they've promised has not been delivered, like, even a quarter. What they've delivered is not a quarter of what was promised.
I know, but it's also ambitious, right? It's like when you promise, is the problem that they haven't delivered, or is it the promise? Is it the problem with the promise? Did they overpromise? Is that the problem?
But they're not reneging on that. They're not saying like, "Oh, we can't actually do this."
But they're saying
we can do this.
I don't know. We'll eventually do it. Maybe. I don't know. Like,
I don't know.
I get what you're saying. Like, the transparency thing. I don't think it's. Here's what I think is that it's not self-serving, right? Like, it is self-serving. Like, there is a reason for the company to be transparent,
right,
that involves the bottom line,
right?
But there's also a lot of companies and cults that aren't transparent, that like that's a way to do things too, and they chose to do it this way. So I don't know. I lean more towards that being a good thing. And then, like you said, at the end of the day, actually, you basically already said this, but about fandoms. So at the end of the day, it's just a game,
right? It's
just a fandom,
right?
And fandoms get weird and have cult-like aspects to them.
Especially when money's involved.
Especially when this amount of money's involved.
Kickstarting and crowdfunding.
And expectations and not meeting them. So
the more interactive a fan base can be, the more like culty it's probably going to be.
Mm-hmm. Of course, yeah.
It's like if you're just watching a TV show you really like, cool, but the second that TV show goes, oh, and you can also start giving us money and we'll make a movie.
Right.
That's going to change
and go to our subreddit.
That's going to change the way the fan base behaves a bit.
Yeah. But I think that I am slightly leaning towards the same way you are. Which is, it's just weird.
It's just weird.
Yeah.
You heard it here first. Star Citizen. Just weird.
Star Citizen. Just weird. But like, I definitely learned quite a bit about this game doing this research. Like, and again, the really eye-opening thing was just like seeing the actual gameplay. It was just like, oh my God, like, it's pretty crazy. And also I think it helped talking to fans because they were like, look, I just like the game. I've definitely given it money. I want it to become a thing. I'm excited about it, but I'm not like on forums, like shouting people down. And I think that's probably true for like most of the people that play and are fans of the game. I think it's just like, generates good headlines when like people do crazy stuff. So like those are it's the vocal minority, right, that ends up kind of making everybody look extra strange and makes people do podcasts about them.
What, us?
But I think we've taken up enough of our listeners' time this episode. If at least, I don't know, maybe you've broken this up into 2 episodes by now, and that won't make any sense. But We'll see. But yeah, I guess go check out Star Citizen. Go check out all of the links.
Yeah, we'll link everything in our show notes.
Yeah, and then of course rate us, please, and subscribe.
Please go on iTunes. Go on, iTunes especially. Unfortunately, iTunes is like the be all and end all. Go rate us and subscribe to us. But whatever podcast platform you're using, subscribe, share, whatever you want. And if you want to get in touch with us, we are on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Gmail. And
at culturejustweird.
culturejustweird@gmail.com. You can find us anywhere on the social medias except Tumblr because they took away the porn. So that's why we're not going to be on it.
Yeah, we were going to post all this porn there, but well.
Porn. Is it a cult or is it just weird?
Probably an episode somewhere there. I don't know. That's some porn. I don't know.
Probably.
Okay.
Thank you for listening.
Great
again. Episode. Good job. Good job on all that research. You went for it, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I like the fact that I was able to interview some people for this one. That was cool.
Get us some legitimacy, like you said.
This is Chris.
And this is Kayla.
And this has been
Cult.
Or Just Weird.
Is that what we usually do? I don't remember how we end.
I don't know.